And here's a voicemail from one of our listeners named Terry.
I have a question regarding my host's brother. He just recently divulged to me that he had a fling or some sort of encounter with his stepdaughter who lives in the house with them still. I don't know if she's 18 or 19. My brother's wife doesn't know about it. He just said that he needed to just release it off his chest. That's why he confessed it to me. My question is this: how do I handle this new information? Do I get him hooked up with a pastor? Do I tell the wife? Do I talk to the young woman, his stepdaughter? I'm just not sure what to do. I'm very heartbroken that he could do such a terrible thing. I'm just conflicted, and I would like your advice, Pastor Adriel. Thank you.
Yeah, Terry, thank you for that. And definitely just heartbroken as well to hear about this situation. I do think that this is something that needs to be brought to the light, both for your sister-in-law. And I mean, obviously, I think him just wanting to get it off his chest, I mean, he's probably realizes how foolish he was, how wrong this is, and is trying to deal with it. But the right way to deal with it is to speak to his wife, to confess that. The other concerning thing is with a stepdaughter. I mean, this is sort of, I mean, I would call it abusive behavior. Even predatory behavior, and that might be difficult for you to hear as his sister, but there's something really wrong with this situation where you have the daughter living in the home and him in this sort of authority position, this father-type figure, and perhaps taking advantage of that and entering into a relationship or I mean, it's something abusive. It's not a relationship. So I'm very concerned. I think that this does need to be brought into the light. I think that the young woman needs to get care and attention and help in terms of dealing with and processing through this situation. You know, Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1, he brings up a case that was similar in the Corinthian church. He says, it is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that is not even tolerated even among pagans, for a man has his father's wife. A little different there, but there's this immoral sexual relationship within the family. And you are ignorant. He says, ought you not rather to mourn? Let him who has done this be removed from among you. If your brother is a professing Christian, this needs to be dealt with in the context of the church too. This is where the church needs to step in and enforce church discipline and plead, for restoration, for forgiveness for him in the church. But really, I think, again, come alongside of the young woman and your sister-in-law too, and caring for them. Because they've been sinned against. And oftentimes, let me just say this, in situations like this, all of the focus and the attention goes to the person who has essentially, committed the sin, the person who is in the position of authority. I mean, when there's situations where there's a pastor who's abused his authority and maybe he opens up and he confesses and everybody focuses on that individual saying, well, he said he's sorry, we need to forgive, so on and so forth. But where we really need to focus is on the young woman and caring for her and coming alongside of her and helping her. And she probably understands that this is wrong, this was not okay, but walking alongside of her and helping her to process this. And I pray that God brings true repentance for your brother in this situation and healing for everyone else involved, and that this does come into the light, and that somehow through even these very terrible circumstances, that somehow through this, Christ would be magnified. Terry, God be with you.
Just a follow-up question for you, Adriel. Terry mentioned that the stepdaughter is 18 or 19, which makes her legally an adult. It doesn't make it any less heinous what happened, but in a situation where there's a minor, and we know, unfortunately, even within the church, sexual abuse happens. And you've mentioned before a wonderful organization that people can turn to if something like that has maybe happened in their church body.
Yeah, the organization is called GRACE. It stands for Godly Response to Abuse in a Christian environment. Netgrace.org is the website. They do a lot of wonderful work, I think, with churches and dealing with cases of abuse within the church and creating safeguarding policies for our churches. And you're right. So in this situation, it sounds like the woman is an adult, barely. Obviously, that things would be different if, she was under the age of 18. And obviously you'd have to get the authorities involved. I would say 100%. And even in this situation, even though she's 18 or 19, Terry said, I would still see this as a case of abuse where you have an authority figure in the home who has entered into an inappropriate relationship with this younger woman. And so it should still be very concerning, and it needs to be brought into the light, and it needs to be dealt with.